named 2.74-mile Gilles Villeneuve circuit, dedicated to Canada's great driver hero who died after his tragic crash at the Belgian Grand Prix meeting. The Canadian race had been brought forward 4 months this year, and after 2 days' practice, Didier Pironi had put his turbocharged Ferrari onto pole position on the starting grid and dedicated his achievement to his late teammate Gilles. And it was Pironi who was to be the focal point of one of the worst start line multiple crashes in the history of Grand Prix racing. As you look at the grid, on the left, Pironi in the scarlet Ferrari. To the right, Arnoux' yellow Renault, and lined up behind them, the 24 other qualifiers. But as the lights flashed to green, Pironi stalled his engine. Those at the front of the grid swerved out of trouble, but at the back, the unsighted drivers hit each other, and Paletti made massive contact with the Ferrari. Out went Bercel, Salazar, Lees, and Pironi and Paletti, of course, were stationary. Pironi immediately leapt out of his car. You see him to the right. He dashed across, the race was stopped, but unknown to anybody, as Pironi struggled to get the wreckage away from the stricken Paletti, petrol was pouring from the ruptured tank of the Osella underneath the car. Paletti had severe internal injuries and broken legs. Meantime, Pironi, having directed the proceedings, stepped back, the marshal stepped forward, and then suddenly the fire ignited. The petrol, and there's 45 gallons of it there, went up with Paletti still strapped in the car. But Paletti was not to suffer from this debacle. With the flames beating around him, it was his internal injuries and the fractures that were the trouble, because the marshals were commendably directing their fire extinguishers the right way, with Pironi doubling forward to help the marshal, indeed to push him into position and force the fire extinguisher fluid and powder downwards to keep the flames away from Paletti, who was unconscious. They succeeded in doing it, and Paletti, I say again, was not at all affected by the fire. But it took a great deal of work and time to get that fire put out. A lot of fire extinguishers, a lot of effort, and all the time Paletti under severe shock. But in time, thanks no doubt to everything that Pironi did and all the others, the fire was put out, and then came the problem of extracting Paletti from the car. He had to be cut out, but it was done. But now let us look at a replay. Paletti at the back with the arrow, 11 cars behind Pironi's Ferrari. When the lights went to green, out from behind the Ferrari came Alain Prost alongside his teammate on the front row of the grid, René Arnoux. Giacomelli avoided Pironi, so did Rosberg and De Cesaris, Lauda and Daly. But meantime, Raoul Bercel in the march was bearing down on the Ferrari, and he hit the scarlet car with a terrific thwack, with Pironi still in it. There he goes, and then Paletti made head-on contact at nearly 100 miles an hour. With Paletti out of the shattered car, and you can see how bad it was, he was then helicoptered to hospital, where the surgeons fought for his life, tragically to fail. Riccardo Paletti was 23 years old. He came from Milan, and this was only to be his second Grand Prix. He had yet to make his name, but he will be sadly missed. Riccardo Paletti. Two hours later, with the grid reforming for the start of the 70-lap to be restarted Canadian Grand Prix, John Watson leads the World Championship by 6 points from Didier Pironi. Then Prost, Rosberg, Patrese and Lauda. And with Pironi, Bercel, Salazar in their spare cars, and Jarier and Lees non-starting, 23 drivers reform the grid. The first 4 rows the same as for the original start. Pironi on pole, then Arnoux, Prost, Piquet, Giacomelli, Watson, De Cesaris and Patrese. And there is John Watson. He won at Detroit and Belgium. He leads the World Championship by 6 points from this man, Didier Pironi, the winner at San Marino. Pole position here, second in the World Championship in his replacement Ferrari. So 70 laps to go, and that is 192 miles. Is it going to be a clean start this time? The answer, as they surge away, is yes. And Didier Pironi leads from René Arnoux, with Alain Prost in third position in the second of the two Renaults. Nelson Piquet is a good fourth position in the Brabham BMW. James, do you think Pironi succeed in holding this lead? He is in his replacement car.
Well, I think he's going to struggle, Murray, because he's got a completely different suspension on this spare car. They were running a new suspension on the car that was crashed, and it had been a great success. They put the car on pole on a circuit where handling is quite important. That's Guerrero just cruising to a halt. He got away very slowly and obviously wasn't running properly at the beginning. But Pironi has got, and of course the car, being a new car with new suspension, or rather new suspension on the car with the other one, they will have worked very hard on that in practice, spent very little time in this older suspension vehicle, set it up, got no comparison for settings, so it's very unlikely that he's going to be able to run at the sort of speed that he would have run had he been in his original race car.
Lap one, the order, Pironi leads, then Arnoux and Prost, and that's Brian Hinton seemingly out of the race. He's getting out of the car. The crane is going to haul it off and park it safely behind the Armco barrier, which is behind the tyres. Prost third, Piquet fourth, Giacomelli fifth, Watson sixth, Rosberg seventh, and De Cesaris eighth as they come through to complete lap one, down to the hairpin. Pironi, Arnoux, Prost and Piquet. Then Giacomelli and Watson. Eddie Cheever's coming up well through the field. The last man goes through, and René Arnoux is through into the lead. Lap two, and René Arnoux has got to the point and the place where he has so often been in the past, number one. So number 16 on the car is number one in the race. It is Arnoux, and Nelson Piquet has got ahead of Prost into third position. The four turbos are still first, second, third and fourth, but the order is changing with Arnoux leading, Pironi second, Piquet third, and Prost is in fourth position. And Alain Prost then hanging on to fourth position there, and it's still Pironi there, Piquet second, and now
here we see it again. This is a straightforward case of Arnoux. He just out-dragged the Ferrari out of the hairpin. He got the power down much better, accelerated way down the straight, and all was well. And now, of course, Piquet and Prost will be anxious to get up past the Ferrari, because already he's showing that he's not as quick. He's lost a fair bit of ground to Arnoux on just that one lap, and Piquet's having a look down the same place where Arnoux got through, but he fails.
And that's Giacomelli's car on the right, and Nigel Mansell. They have made contact. Giacomelli was in fifth position, and this is the hairpin. And Nigel Mansell sitting in the car still, as is Giacomelli. The marshals manhandle the car backwards. Bruno Giacomelli, the panda, gets out of the car, and oh dear, he's not at all happy. Bruno Giacomelli gives the car two good stirring kicks. Take that, he says, I'm off. And away goes Giacomelli. On goes the race. René Arnoux is still in the lead. Piquet is second. Pironi is third. Alain Prost is fourth. And now they are making their way down towards the hairpin at colossal speed, and you don't need me to tell you that the Alfa Romeo and the John Player Special of Nigel Mansell are stationary there, and there is a small gap, and Prost is in third position ahead of Pironi. And here they come, the leader, and you can see the marshals gesticulating, but they will be able to see the cars, and mercifully they are off the racing line. So now they're going through, and there is Cheever coming up in sixth position. And Pironi doesn't seem to be going at all well in the Ferrari, the man who showed so much promise. But let us not forget, as we see Brian Hinton go through, now somehow or other, Brian Hinton has managed to get back into the race. He is off the crane and on the course. Arnoux, Piquet second, Prost third, Pironi fourth, and now John Watson is in fifth position with Giacomelli out of the race. Look for the red and white car, and there it is behind John Watson in sixth position. There he is, it's Eddie Cheever. Then Andrea De Cesaris. Behind De Cesaris is Patrese and Rosberg. There is the Finnish driver in the Williams, and Niki Lauda chasing Rosberg. Roberto Guerrero touring in, the Colombian driver in the inside, and Patrese ahead of Keke Rosberg. Patrese in 8th position. And here comes that crocodile with Patrese, Rosberg, and Cheever and De Cesaris go through 6th and 7th places. Then Patrese, Rosberg, and Elio De Angelis is ahead in the John Player special of the Ligier of Jacques Lafitte. We haven't seen him before, and his teammate Cheever is ahead of him. Well, with Giacomelli's Alfa Romeo parked, with Nigel Mansell's car parked, it's still fast and furious behind the leaders, and René Arnoux is fastest on the course, 132.2. And that's a speed of 106.9, which is well below the lap record, and we are now on lap 5 in this 70-lap race, and there is the leader. René Arnoux as Guerrero now touring into the pits, and everybody who likes René Arnoux, and that is everybody, is keeping their fingers crossed for this plucky and ever-cheerful Frenchman that he will keep going. Lap 8, Arnoux, Piquet, Prost, and James looking back to that tragic start that we had. Is there, I wonder, something wrong with the current start procedure?
Well, it's the way it's always been, but there's always been a case for and against rolling starts, and I have to say that having seen this accident and the one last year in Belgium, which was of a very similar nature, where a car towards the front of the grid remained stationary, the cars coming behind, the early ones were able to avoid it because they could see it and they were going much slower, but by the time the cars from the back of the grid get there, if a car in front is masking, as was on both occasions, the driver of the car that actually had the accident couldn't see the stationary car because you can't see through a car in front of you, and when it moves out of the way, he's going too quick, like 100 miles an hour, and he hits it. So rolling starts have been common practice in the States. They're a bit different. They haven't been liked in Grand Prix racing because they give an advantage to the people who are good at cheating rather than people who are good at getting good starts. More emphasis on the skill of cheating than the skill of starting in them. But it would avoid this sort of accident, although the cars are moving faster. It should be carefully examined, the case for using rolling starts, because whatever the aesthetics are, the case for safety and for saving human life is absolutely paramount. But there shouldn't be an immediate panic. It should be examined carefully.
Well, John Watson there, coming towards us now, ahead of Riccardo Patrese, and it's still Piquet, Arnoux and Prost. And John Watson there is Patrese. Patrese, of course, is in... Yes, there's Arnoux, and Piquet's going through. Piquet taking the lead from Arnoux in the Renault, René Arnoux in the turbocharged Renault, and now, for the first time in the history of Grand Prix racing, it is a turbocharged car other than the Ferrari or the Renault which is leading. It is that of Nelson Piquet there in the Brabham BMW turbocharged car ahead of René Arnoux, and the Frenchman now will have to struggle.
Yes, well, that was a straightforward passing manoeuvre again. What Piquet does to Arnoux, what Arnoux did to the Ferrari at the end of the first lap, got better traction out of the hairpin and just simply out-dragged him down the straight into the next series of corners.
And thus it continues. Nelson Piquet, there is Arnoux trying very, very hard with the front of the car sliding out as he went round the corner, and he's actually closed up a bit because Nelson Piquet was nearly 2 seconds ahead of him earlier on, and René Arnoux is certainly starting a charge, and they're both pulling away. There is Prost in the background in the second of the two Renaults, and there is no doubt about the fact that Arnoux's car there is going better than that, or is being driven better than that, of his teammate Alain Prost. There is Prost in the background. And now let's look back, because Eddie Cheever has been coming up through the field extremely well. There is Prost in third position. And sure enough, it is Eddie Cheever in fourth position now. Riccardo Patrese is in fifth place. De Cesaris is 6th, and Pironi is slipping right down the field. He is out of the World Championship points places. He is in 7th place, ahead of Watson 8th and Derek Daly 9th. And there is the battle for the lead. But Piquet, there is Chiva with Patrese, 4th and 5th. Then De Cesaris, you will see, just come into your sight, and there he is, the distinctive Alfa Romeo, Andrea De Cesaris, who has driven so much better this season.
Well, the Ford engine cars are getting comprehensively blown off by the turbos here, the limited number of turbos that are running healthily, but they're not too far behind, and they're certainly around to pick up the pieces if the turbo reliability goes suspect. But it's interesting because this is a really bad beating for the Ford cars on the sort of circuit that isn't that's fairly twisty and tight and oughtn't to favour the turbos.
Niki Lauda, that is. You see the helmeted figure in the background. Off come the gloves, off comes the helmet, and Niki Lauda, double world champion for Ferrari in 1975 and 1977, tempted back to racing by McLaren after 2 years' absence, is out. And on lap 27, as you see, Nelson Piquet leads with Arnoux second. Patrese is third now, ahead of Alain Prost. And there is Arnoux. And the car's getting well spread out round the circuit. We should next see the third place man, James.
Yes, it's significant, this turbo beating here, because despite the circuit being a bit of a power circuit with long straights and good accelerating areas, it is tight and twisty by anybody's description. And so if the Ford cars can't win here, or at least get amongst the turbos, then the future looks fairly bleak for non-turbocharged cars in Grand Prix racing, as these turbocharged cars develop their chassis and their engines, and they've got more to come than the Ford cars have.
Well, the leaders have completed another lap round the hairpin, followed by 2 tail-enders that they have lapped, including Brian Hinton in the unsponsored now Tyrrell. And Piquet comes towards us, and you see now the gap between himself and René Arnoux. And it would seem that Piquet, the race leader, has very much got the measure of the Frenchman, because he is just easing out an increased lead all the time as Arnoux circulates behind him. Prost dropping back as well, so Prost-Renault doesn't look too happy. Piquet and Arnoux. There goes Arnoux, and Brian Hinton comes into the pits, presumably to retire. And that is René Arnoux, who was in second position, and he's done exactly what he did at Monaco. He has spun. Now, will the same thing happen to him there as did at Monaco? Will he be able to restart? Obviously no, because Arnoux is getting out of the car. James.
Well, that's really terrible. Arnoux certainly has been fairly unlucky, but he has really made a terrible mistake there. He's running in second place. There was nobody around him. It was a totally unforced error. That is always assuming that it was an error. It is just possible that something went wrong with the car, causing him to spin, but it didn't look like it. He did it at Monaco. He threw away a top placing there. And when you're a top Grand Prix driver, your car breaks down enough times without you helping it and breaking down for it. And it really is important. A driver can't be a top driver if he makes unforced errors and gives away good placings. He's well in a position to possibly win this race, and he's just thrown it away, and that's the second time in a couple of races.
Well, and while we here are trying to solve the puzzle of how Brian Hinton has literally got off the hook and back into the race, there goes the race leader, Nelson Piquet, secure now in the knowledge from his pit signals that it is his teammate Riccardo Patrese in second place. So Turbo Brabham BMW leads, and 3-litre Brabham Ford Cosworth V8 is in second place with Patrese driving. Prost is in third position in the Renault with his teammate out of the race. Up to fourth place has come De Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo. To fifth, Chiva. There is the gap between Nelson Piquet and Riccardo Patrese, nearly half a minute. John Watson is in sixth position now and in the points.
I saw a distinct puff of smoke come from the back of Piquet's BMW engine then. Oops, well, there is a real puff of smoke, and that's a Renault, and it's the only one surviving, so it must be Prost, who is in a cloud of smoke, and that's another rather bad failure for Renault. They threatened to clean everything up this season. They produced a very, very good chassis with the most powerful engine, and they looked on real form, well ahead of the other turbo teams in development and everything, and they've made a real mess of it this year. Their reliability has been bad. Here's another engine blow-up, and they've had plenty of mistakes. It's been a real nightmare for them.
De Cesaris then up into third position, Cheever to fourth, and Watson moves up another place to fifth position, and that would give him 2 more points in the World Championship. Lap 45, 70-lap race. Nelson Piquet there is searing his way through the field, past Brian Hinton to lap it.
Another little black puff out of Nelson's exhaust pipe there, but the car seems to be quite healthy at the moment, despite that, but they are there.
Yes, and the remarkable Brian Hinton there, who seems to appear everywhere around this circuit, has been lapped now, probably for the second or third time by Pironi. And that is the battle you see between De Cesaris and Cheever for now third position. So the positions now are Brabham, Piquet in the lead, Brabham, Patrese second, Alfa Romeo there of De Cesaris third, Talbot of Cheever in fourth position, and not very far behind them now. Look, there is John Watson in fifth position, and Derek Daly in the Williams is in sixth place. Well, the race is really boiling, particularly around this battle for third position, but there is enormous interest at the front, and the question is the Brabham BMW of Nelson Piquet going to be able to go the full race distance? De Cesaris completes another lap in third position, Cheever in fourth place. James, Renault's win, yes, we're used to that. Ferrari's win, we're used to that, both turbos. Do you think the BMW will go the distance?
Well, basically, any engine that's gone this far is obviously reasonable, right? There's no reason why it shouldn't go the full distance. They're most unreliable in their sort of first 100 miles of life, and then when they start to get old and worn out, because if anything's not quite right, it tends to break early in its life. But it'll be a terrific achievement if they can finish a race. It'll be their first proper healthy finish with the car. They've been working on it for about the right amount of time, and they ought to be getting it just about reliable by now, although of course turbo engines are notoriously difficult to do that. So it's really a question of keeping the fingers crossed and see how he can go.
And we continue to look at the battle for third position between De Cesaris and Cheever, with Patrese and Piquet ahead of them, with Watson and Daly behind them. And you can see, although this Gilles Villeneuve circuit is not terribly bumpy as many go, nevertheless the cars are giving a tremendous pounding to the drivers with their rigid suspensions, and it is really only the tyres which are protecting the drivers from a solid battery. And we look now from way above, from the airship, down on Nelson Piquet, who is going on his victorious way on lap 61 in this 70-lap race. So he's only got 9 laps to go now to his 7th Grand Prix victory, if he finishes where he is now. This is his 55th race. And by the way, his real name is Nelson Sotomayor. Piquet was his mother's maiden name, which he used to prevent his parents from knowing he was racing in his early career. Well, he doesn't need to bother about that now. World champion and one of the most famous of them all. Nearly home, now 14 seconds ahead of Patrese. The gap is narrowing, but Piquet knows exactly what the situation is.
Yes, Piquet will be very happy with this result now. He's had a bit of a bad year so far since he won the World Championship. Things have been not perfectly smooth and happy within the team, and then he got parked in the BMW cars about having been disqualified from the one good race that he had this year, the Brazilian Grand Prix, which he won, and then there was a technical aggravation which he lost out on, and then he persevered with the BMW car while it was unreliable and too new and they couldn't quite get it right. So it's all come right at the right moment, and of course marvellous day for Brabhams as a team as well, because Patrese is going beautifully in second place and they look very much like getting a 1-2, and so that's a fine way to bounce back. And I have to say Piquet has driven absolutely immaculately in this race, which is a very good sign, because it's not easy after you're going through a bad patch to suddenly get in a good car and really deliver, because quite frankly you get out of practice at things going well, but he's really risen to the occasion beautifully.
Yes, he's kept his hand in magnificently, and there are 11 cars left out of the 23 who started. Piquet leads, Patrese, De Cesaris third, then Cheever, Watson closing in 5th, Daly 6th, De Angelis 7th and Sura 8th, Pironi 9th, Baldi 10th and Jochen Maas in 11th and last place out of the 23 that began this 70-lap, very sad Canadian Grand Prix. John Watson, of course, is the World Championship contender that is really doing well in this race. He's leading the World Championship, and he has 6 points lead over Pironi when the race began, and Pironi is not in the points, he's hardly in the race now. And now Watson in 5th place is on his way to 2 points, and every point is valuable. This is the half-distance race in the World Championship Series, 16 races over the full year, and this is race 8 at Canada. Unlike last year, held in excellent weather conditions. Last year, when Jacques Lafitte won, it was held in the most appalling non-stop rainstorm. Well, Piquet has got to be careful to keep off the curbs, and I guess, James, concentration is very much a problem at this stage of the race.
Well, it's a problem when you're going slowly, funnily enough. When you're driving absolutely flat out, concentration is quite automatic. There's Piquet bouncing it on a curb, as Murray predicted, but it is difficult because also, you know, the car, you're very tired physically, and it's important, that bounce on the curve, funny enough, and he's sliding a bit wide there, but I think his tyres are a little bit warm, because if you saw, there was a good shot of a lack of grip of the front tyres. He's done a lot of laps, but that little jolt on the curb is the best thing, actually, a little mistake like that to wake up, gives you a little spurt of adrenaline, and he should really wake up sharply. Yes, we'll see it again. It's very difficult, as I say, when you're going a couple of seconds a lap slower than absolutely flat out, and you're near the end of the race, your mind can wander, and that's just the time it's most difficult. Certainly the time that I made most of my mistakes. We see him now, he just bounces it on the curve a bit. It's not very good for them, shouldn't harm it though, and that'll wake him up, and he'll get that little jolt, which will tell him to concentrate hard. Only a little bit to go.
Well, I must say I can think of better ways to wake me up, but Nelson Piquet now has got a very short distance to go, and Eddie Cheever out of the race in 4th position. What appalling luck. Cheever, who drove so brilliantly at Detroit, 2nd place, and he's furious, as Giacomelli was, out of the car to safety, onto the tyre, leaps lightly over the Armco into pit lane, and with only 4 laps to go, and with 3 points in the bag to add to his World Championship points tally, Eddie Cheever bitterly disappointed and frustrated, and that means that De Cesaris will move up to 3rd position. John Watson goes up another place and helps his World Championship points. 4th position, Derek Daly 5th, and Elio De Angelis in 6th position. Nelson Piquet passes Cheever's car, the stricken, broken Talbot. Whatever the problem was, it's taken Cheever out of the race. And Piquet has got so little distance to go now as we look down on this very distinctive Ile Notre-Dame Gilles Villeneuve circuit, uniquely surrounded by water, the site of the Expo of 1967, where the Olympic rowing races were held. And Piquet rowing gently on the gear lever now, because he has no problems about where to change up and where to change down. He is in an absolutely superb rhythm, pacing himself to the finish, keeping away from the apices of the corners, and just generally taking things easy on his way to win 7 in his career. Soon to start the 70th and last lap. The gap now has increased, because it was at one point between Piquet, the leader, and Patrese second, down to 10 seconds. And either Patrese has eased off or Piquet has speeded up. But for whatever of those two alternatives, Nelson Piquet is now increasing his lead slightly over his teammate, and into the last lap he goes. He gets the thumbs up signal from one of the fire marshals in his distinctive silver suit, and after 68 laps you will see that Patrese is 12 seconds, now 10 behind Piquet, 14 seconds behind him is De Cesaris, but this was a lap ago, I remind you. John Watson still in 4th position, ahead of Daly, and Elio De Angelis 6th, and Mark Sura now is in 7th place. And I can tell you that it's actually discernibly getting darker, because the race started very, very late, of course, after the original start. And the original start was at 4:15, so it's well into the evening now. But there is no doubt about the fact that this is the last lap, and there is no doubt about the fact that Nelson Piquet, and that is De Cesaris. We're getting the same thing happening here as happened at Monaco. De Cesaris, who was in 3rd position, is out of the race. Up into 3rd position then will come John Watson. 4 points to add to his World Championship. Is he going to get any more? Surely not from Nelson Piquet. John Watson then 3rd, Patrese 2nd, Piquet here almost home. He really is almost home now. He's passing De Cesaris and lapping him. Andre De Cesaris, and this is the last corner of the last lap, and Nelson Piquet is almost there. He will see in a moment the checkered flag for his 7th Grand Prix win in his career. He does it. The Brabham mechanics come over the Armco. He sees the checkered flag. Piquet has won a historic victory in the Brabham Turbo, and that is Derek Daly, who was 5th, and he parks his car. This is just like Monaco, in front of De Cesaris's car, as Riccardo Patrese there finishes in 2nd place. And Derek Daly now out, with De Cesaris sitting on the Armco. Daly disgustedly walks away, so that's Cheever, De Cesaris and Daly, who are in the top 6, out of the race in the very closing stages, as Piquet winds down on his victory lap. 9 points, Patrese 2nd, 6th, John Watson 3rd, De Angelis 4th, Sura 5th, and De Cesaris in 6th position for that 1 point. And that, of course, makes a difference to the World Championship placings. John Watson, with that position of his, now is 10 points ahead of Didier Pironi. Patrese just 1 ahead of Alain Prost, who is 1 ahead of Keke Rosberg. Niki Lauda in 6th position with 12 points, and Nelson Piquet in 7th position, the world champion, with 11 points. Now, from Canada, the World Championship Series returns to Europe. It returns to Holland in 3 weeks' time on the morning of Saturday,